Hello, happy Tuesday and welcome to this Food Safety Essentials webinar, Prerequisite Programmes for Food Safety. My name is Simon Timpley from the International Food Safety and Quality Network, and today, as ever, we're joined by Tony Connor from IFSQN. Good evening, Tony.
Hi Simon, good evening everybody, welcome.
Yeah, we've got a good crowd, 1,284 registered, so should get some good discussion afterwards. So I'll leave it to you, Tony.
Thank you. So, welcome to the latest Food Safety Essentials session. Each month we have a general food safety question and answer webinar, which we start off with a short presentation. This month we have a presentation on prerequisite programs for food manufacturers. Just a reminder, and these are accessible on the IFSQN website, where previous videos are available. And previously we talked about what US food safety recall data tells us, and that was like 75% of recalls were due to contamination with environmental pathogens or incorrect labeling and undeclared allergens. Nearly 30% were due to environmental pathogens, Salmonella and Listeria monocytogenes, and just over 46% were due to labeling or undeclared allergens. Other topics we've covered include the importance of inspections and the importance of internal audits in ensuring food safety. We've covered new product development. We've looked at the most common SQF certification audit non-conformances, making positive use of complaints, and preliminary steps to hazard analysis. So as I said, today we're going to look at an overview of the requirements for prerequisite programs for food manufacturers as per Codex General Principles of Food Hygiene and the main GFSI benchmark standards. So the key parts of GFSI benchmarking requirements are hazard and risk management system, HACCP-based systems, food safety management systems, and good industry practices such as good manufacturing practices. Quite interestingly, here they refer to Codex quite extensively. The Codex Elementary Guidelines on Food Hygiene and its HACCP Annex constitutes an internationally recognized reference for food business operators and competent authorities to oversee food safety. As such, in addition to the following key elements, the certification program owner shall ensure that the site has knowledge and align their practices to best industry practices and the Codex Alimentarius General Principles of Food Hygiene. So the requirements for GMPs for certification program owners include requirements for site environment, local environment, site design, construction, layout and flow of operations, product contamination risks, segregation, employee facilities, personal hygiene, protective clothing, medical screening, training, housekeeping, cleaning and disinfection, rework, site inspections, checks, air quality and water, waste management, pest control, reception of purchased materials, transport, storage, stock management, equipment, maintenance. Okay, so that's the GFSI benchmark requirements. So let's look at the certification standards themselves, and we'll start with SQF Food Safety Code, where GMPs requirements are in Module 11, where there are requirements for site location and premises, site operation, personnel hygiene and welfare, personnel processing practices, water, air, eye supply, receipt, storage and transport, separation of functions, and waste disposal. To give you an example of a larger breakdown of those requirements, these are examples of GMP procedures that I've written to comply with that module of the SQF code. So, site location and premises includes things like risk assessments, building materials, construction of materials, lights, inspection area, dust, insect pest proofing, ventilation, equipment and utensils, and roadways. And then most of the other elements we've talked about are covered in these requirements, including personnel requirements, quite extensive. For utilities, we split them down into water supply, treatment, quality, ice supply, air and other gases. Storage is split into cold storage, freezing, chilling, storage, dry ingredients, packaging, shelf-stable goods, loading, transport, unloading practices. There's also storage of hazard chemicals in there. And then under foreign body contamination, we consider areas like glass, control of glass and brittle materials, breakage procedures, control of metal, control of knives, detection of foreign objects, etc. For the BRCGS, Global Standard for Food Safety Issue 9, prerequisite programs are the basic environmental and operational conditions in a food business that are necessary to produce safe food. They control generic hazards covering good manufacturing and good hygienic practice, as detailed in sections 4 to 8, which are site standards, product control, process control, personnel, and production risk zones, high risk and high care. So, BRC splits out the standards. So a large chunk are covered in site standards, so of what we've already discussed. Additions in there include control of pet food and animal feed. Housekeeping hygiene includes CIP and environmental monitoring. And then we've got other sections. So we've got product control, which includes design and development, labeling, management of allergens, product authenticity, packaging, product inspection, release. Then we've got process controls, the control of operations, labeling and pack controls, quantity, calibration and control of measuring equipment, personnel controls. And then there are specific controls for high risk, high care and ambient high care, and specific requirements for layout, buildings, maintenance, staff facilities, housekeeping and hygiene, waste and protective clothing. The BRCGS standard tends to be the most prescriptive of the GFSI benchmark standards. For example, if we look at 410 foreign body detection and removal equipment, it includes sections on selection and operation of foreign body detection and removal equipment, filters and sieves, metal detectors and X-ray equipment, magnets, optical sorting, container cleanliness, and other foreign body detection and removal equipment. For the IFS food standard, which is for auditing quality and food safety of food products, this is version 8. The standards for GMPs are included in 2 sections: operational processes, measurement, analysis, and improvement. Looking at the FSSC 22000 certification scheme, which is version 6 currently, this is based on ISO 22000 Food Safety Management System requirements, and in particular 8.2, a prerequisite program section. When selecting and or establishing PRPs, the organisation needs to ensure that applicable statutory, regulatory and mutually agreed customer requirements are identified, and you should consider the applicable part of the ISO TS 22000 series. When establishing PRPs, the organisation shall consider construction and layout of buildings, layout of premises, supply of utilities, pest control, waste disposal, supporting services, equipment, cleaning and maintenance, supplier approval and assurance processes, reception of incoming materials, storage, dispatch and handling, measures for the prevention of contamination, cleaning and disinfecting, personal hygiene, product information, consumer awareness. For this scheme, there are additional requirements which are in the FSSC 22000 additional requirements document. These include management of services and purchase materials, labelling, food defence, food fraud, management of allergens, environmental monitoring, food safety and quality culture, quality control, transport, storage, warehousing, hazard control and measures for preventing cross-contamination, PRP verification, product design and development, health status, equipment management, food loss and waste, communication requirements. For the FSSC 22000 certification scheme, the ISO 22002 documents have now been updated in 2025, so we expect this to be included in version 7, which is due to be published next March, end of March, early April next year. So what that will mean is the table on the far right, where the scheme will include additional requirements, but also ISO 22000, which was last reviewed and confirmed in 2023, so that remains current. And then the new ISO 22002 prerequisite program standards, so 22002 100 2025, which is prerequisite programs on food safety, part 100 requirements for the food, feed, packaging, supply chain. And then for each of the categories, there will be the individual 22002 series, which is specific to that food category. So Codex guidance requires prerequisite programs to be put in place prior to hazard analysis. Prior to hazard application, a food business should have in place prerequisite programs including good hygienic practices established in accordance with Part 1, Good Hygienic Practices of the General Principles of Food Hygiene. These are sections 7 to 15. You should also consider appropriate product and sector-specific codes of practice and in accordance with relevant food safety requirements set by competent authorities. Prerequisite programs should be well established, fully operational and verified where possible in order to facilitate the successful application and implementation of the HACCP system. HACCP application will not be effective without prior implementation of prerequisite programs, including good hygienic practices. So I've posted these before, but these are visual examples of what we would expect to see in terms of good manufacturing practices or good operational good manufacturing practices, standard operating procedures. So standards that will cover design, layout, construction of buildings and facilities, maintenance programs for equipment and facilities, control of utilities, rework, waste control, pest management, transportation, preventive maintenance, cleaning and disinfectant, cleaning, disinfectant facilities, processes to prevent cross-contamination, environmental monitoring, personal hygiene requirements, raw material storage, prevention of chemical and physical contamination, and allergen controls, etc. So you can get copies of these slides, so you can refer back to this presentation. Let's look at a comparison of the required Codex General Principles of Hygiene with these new 2002 prerequisite programs. So this is a summary of the contents. So this is a comparison of Codex General Principles of Food Hygiene with ISO 22002 100 and 22002 2025 versions. So they have similar sections and requirements. The Codex still requires or includes recall procedures, training competence, and there's a section on control of operation. Rework is barely mentioned with regards to flow diagram. The 2002 standards include food defense and food fraud. So all these standards cover location and structure, the construction and layout of buildings, design and layout of facilities, construction and layout of buildings, design and layout of facilities and workspaces. The coverage of utilities and waste management is similar, but 22002 includes recycling. Equipment suitability and maintenance is covered in all. Codex doesn't cover purchasing, but includes specifications and incoming materials. Both have requirements for measures for prevention of contamination and cleaning of and disinfection, and similarly for pest control. Also for personal hygiene and employee facilities. So recall procedures were previously included in 2002, but are not any longer. Both have got similar sections on storage, transport, warehousing. As I mentioned previously, food defense and food fraud are not included in Codex. So Codex includes extra sections on training competence and on control of operation. And this is in a section of good hygienic practices. So these are areas where they're suggesting or recommending that we look at things that we might normally only do during hazard analysis, during the development of our HACCP system, but it's also recommended we do this when looking at good hygienic practices and implementing those. So things like product description and process description, monitoring corrective action, verification should be in place for prerequisites. There are other things they look at, including time and temperature control, specific process steps, etc. Okay.
Tony, I thought it was.
Sorry, my sound's gone off, hasn't it? Sorry. Okay.
I don't know. It stopped a few minutes ago. I thought it was me, so I had logged out and back on.
We covered that slide, didn't we?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. Okay, I'll just recap on this anyway. That this codex includes a section on control of operation, where if you're looking at GHPs rather than hazard analysis, so prior to actual hazard analysis and assessment, in the control of operation using GHPs, they recommend that you should look at these sections, which some things like product description were normally in the hazard analysis and the steps to hazard analysis. So there's recommendations and guidance to look at descriptions of products and processes, product description, process description, consideration of the effectiveness of GHPs, and of course, prerequisite programs and good manufacturing practices should be monitoring, and we should take corrective action if they're out of control, and they should be verified. And there's other sections on time and temperature control, specific process steps. Okay. So moving on and looking at the ISO 22002 series, which is published in 2025. The main document, ISO 22002 now, is the 100 2025 version. So prerequisite programs on food safety, part 100, requirements for the food, feed and packaging supply chain, which is intended to be used when establishing, implementing and maintaining the PRP specific to the organizations in conjunction with ISO 22008.2. ISO 22002-100 comprises of the common PRPs from the prior specific ISO 22000 series and provide a unified understanding of the PRPs across sectors. Where unique sector-specific PRPs remain or a new sector is added with unique PRPs, These are provided in other parts of the 22000 series. So, for example, now with 4 food manufacturers, we have ISO 22001 2025, Prerequisite Programmes on Food Safety Part 1 Food Manufacturing, which is intended to be used in conjunction with ISO 22000 and ISO 22002-100. So let's have a quick look and a comparison of the previous Part 1. So this is with regards to food manufacturing. So I'm comparing Part 1 2009 with the new Part 100 and Part 1 2025, which are now applicable. So key changes of note, which I'll go through as we go through this. The environment, you need to consider internal and external sources of contamination. There's requirements now which are more specific for location, which include things like away from areas where for flooding, where there's a likelihood of pests, where waste cannot be removed effectively. In construction and layout, there's some rewording, and drainage requirements are included into and from the site. The design and layout of facilities and workspace needs to minimize contamination and cross-contamination and be proportionate to the risk of cross-contamination. Laboratory facility requirements have been removed. Come back to that. There's a need for maintenance and service activities for utilities. On compressed air and other gases, there needs to be specifications for the quality of compressed air and other gases and monitoring. For lighting, additional requirements for lighting to detect defects, contamination, and examination of equipment and facilities. In waste, there's a new section on requirements for recycling and reuse of materials. For waste containers should be provided in adequate numbers and capacity, designed to prevent pest infestation. For equipment, there are additional requirements. A requirement to install and use equipment in accordance with the conditions of use provided by a manufacturer. There are additional requirements for use and inspection of equipment. And under equipment capability, there are additional requirements for design and capability, monitoring and verification. Most of the new measures for prevention of contamination are in 2002, Part 1, which includes microbiological contamination, allergen control, where products need to be protected from intended allergen cross-contact by a number of factors, so there's extra requirements in there. A section on physical contamination, and then a new section on chemical contamination, where measures are to be in place to prevent contamination of foods or food contact materials by chemicals, approval and control of chemicals, specific equipment for chemicals, and action when contamination occurs. Cleaning programs are required in specific areas. They need to be appropriate and not compromise food safety. Agents and tools need to be selected and authorized and fit for purpose. There's extensive rewording of pest control and additional controls in control and eradication. There's new hygiene requirements for personnel awareness of hazards to operate accordingly and maintain personal cleanliness. Additional requirements for toilets, storage of personnel's own food, lockers, clothing, and gloves, and behaviour. There are new requirements for the control of visitors and external providers. As I mentioned before, the requirement for product recall procedures was removed, but with regards to ISO 22000 and FSSC 22000 certification, product recall is included in section 8.95, withdrawal and recall. There are additional requirements for storage, stacking, and for materials and chemicals to be stored separately. New requirements for dispatch. There's considerable rewording of transport and requirement for documented information of inspection and cleaning. Product and consumer information is reworded and more specific, but no longer a reference to labeling. There are new requirements for food defense and food fraud, and also examples in the annex. So there's examples of food defense measures and examples of food fraud mitigation measures. There's a forum topic on the changes in those documents, including Codex, which you can go to. You can post and interact with other members on that. And similarly, there's one for food packaging, and there's documents in there which summarize the changes for food packaging manufacturers. Okay, sorry, that's a short presentation for me. Obviously, I'm not very good at short presentations, because that's longer than intended. And sorry about the microphone.
No worries, thanks.
Right, have we got any questions, anybody?
We have, just bear with me. Okay, so first question is from BG Ravikumar, a regular. Are ISO 22002-1 and ISO 22002-100 both applicable to manufacturing organization for implementation? Yeah,
if you look back at the slides when you after the webinar in the introduction where I talked about 100 and then the other 2002. 100 is a general one across all food safety sectors, and that's applicable for everybody. And then when there are additional requirements, which there definitely are for food manufacturers, then an industry spec sector specific 22002 is published. In that case, it's 22001 for food manufacturing. So both are applicable.
Okay, thanks. Now, has Sean, yeah, we do share the slides and the recording afterwards, so don't worry. Question from Soundarajan. Hopefully I got your name correct. Just bear with me. Is a new requirement ISO 22002-100? Okay, you've just mentioned that.
Yeah, it's that's newly published. It was published, I think it was June or July. And what will happen now? Previously, the FSSC 22000 certification scheme referred to the specific other prerequisite standards, which was 22002 Part 1 for food manufacturing. And now that version will need to change and be updated. So in version 7, it will refer to 22002-100, which is a general PIP requirement, and also 22002 to Part 1 for food manufacturers.
Okay. Question from Francois. For a company which is already FSSC 22000 certified, is there any real new topic to take into account with this new ISO structure?
I've just gone through the major changes for you there. So those were the major changes. There was you hadn't already covered it. There was new sections on recycling, chemical contamination, but that was an overview of the changes. If you refer to the link to the forum page, I've posted that in detail where you can you could refer to that. So there are a few.
Okay, question from Safedin. Will it be required to go for new certification for ISO 22000 to 22002?
22,000 is your certification standard. The 22,002 series are for prerequisite programs, which are referred to in ISO 22000. So you will need to, when your certification audit comes around, you will need to be complying with these new published prerequisite standards for prerequisite programs.
Makes sense. Philomena, have you any information when they will be implemented in FSSC?
The timescale posted on the FSSC 22000 website said they anticipate that version 7 will be published at the end of March, early April, so end of first quarter, start of second quarter of the year. That usually they give you a certain amount of time to comply with that new version, but I would expect most people to get up to speed quite quickly.
Cool.
Yeah.
Safedin, for poultry, which standard is applicable?
I assume it's food manufacturing. It depends which sector it's in, but I presume it's in food manufacturing.
Okay. And Mansour, why PRPs are important in catering?
There is a section on catering. I think it's two. Let's just check. I think it's 2. Yeah, part 2. There's a section on catering, which is part 2. So those are important. So you need, as a catering organisation, you need to go with 100, as I've said before, but also prerequisite program part 2, which is for catering. They're important because they different elements like applications specifically applicable to catering organizations. I'll read you some examples.
Yeah, your voice was breaking up a bit there. I didn't know if it was me or
sorry.
you, but I think its connection was a bit poor for just.
Right, sorry about that. So catering generally includes examples of other prerequisites for such as cooking, which are applicable to catering organizations, as well as all the prerequisites we've talked about already.
To anybody, just make sure you mark your question as a question, or else it'll just get lost in the chat. We're only monitoring the questions in the Q&A tab, so please add it.
Yes, still on catering. I mean, there's obviously lots of things that are important in the kitchen, which are basics like temperature control, purchasing procedures, goods incoming checks, prevention of cross-contamination between raw and cooked colour, usually having colour-coded equipment, knives, chopping boards, different ones for salad to raw meat, etc. That's the type of additional prerequisites I'd expect to see. Yeah.
Okay, John's asking about a grace period to comply to the new.
Yeah, usually they're usually included in the new version when it's published, and usually the certification standard owners, so in this case FSSC 22000, usually give a grace period of 6 months. But when they publish version 7, which won't be till March or April, then I'm sure they'll give a timeline for certification audits to version 7, which includes the new prerequisite program standards, the new 22000 series, or that's what I would anticipate it would include. And so it's some period after then. It could be 6 months, but previously from version 6, they gave a 12-month timeline.
Okay. Ankit, PRP and preventive controls, can they be combined?
For sure, yeah. I mean, a lot of the PRPs I've talked about are preventive controls, aren't they? I mean, there will be additional preventive controls, which might be other process controls and critical control points, but certainly a lot of preventive controls are PRPs or good manufacturing practices. So yes, largely.
Question from Precious. Is it important to study in order to get standard certificate or experience in PRPs? Or is experience in PRPs enough to get chances of being employed in offers where one of the requirements are standards?
I think if you haven't got experience, then qualifications can demonstrate the knowledge you've got. If you've got experience, then you should have gained some knowledge, and you can demonstrate that to in an interview for employment purposes, but also when you have auditors coming around the factory. So. For people that are less experienced, qualifications help. For those that are more experienced, then knowledge of the standards is great. But obviously, when new standards come along, you still need to learn those.
Just to reiterate, please put your questions in the questions Q&A tab, please. Question from George. Did I understand it correctly that in future ISO 22000 or FSSC 22000 is referring to 2 technical specs instead of 1 now, which is now the case?
That is correct, George. Yes, in the future, and the main example I've given here, because I'm talking about food manufacturing, is the 2 technical specifications, but they're called standards these days, I think. But the 2 standards that are applicable are 22002 Part 100, which is for general PRPs across all food safety sectors, and then Part 1, which is 22002 Part 1, which is for food manufacturing. Now, for other industry sectors, as we've already mentioned, catering, there are other PRPs that are PRP standards that are applicable in the 22002 series.
Okay. Any more questions for Tony? I will pick this. I'll mark it myself as a question. Lucky. Please confirm that, for example, catering, we will need general PRP and sector-specific PRP, meaning we will now need 2 PRPs.
You need to comply with the requirements of the 2 standards. Now, listen, they're not duplicated. What happens is there's general PRPs that apply across all food sectors, and that is 22002 Part 100, which I've given you details of in the presentation. And now, if there are any sector extra specific requirements, they're included in an additional standard, which in the case I'm talking about today is food manufacturing, and the extra requirements in there are things like CIP requirements, the prevention of contamination requirements. So it's not a duplication, it's a general PRP standard and then an industry sector specific standard. And yes, you need to take into consideration the requirements of both because they're not duplicated.
Okay. Ramona, how do effective prerequisite programs such as sanitation, pest control and supply management form the foundation for a successful HACCP plan, and what risks arise if they are poorly implemented?
That sounds like a few questions, Ramona. Yeah, so what we need to do in the first place before we go to a HACCP application is we need to establish these good manufacturing practices and prerequisite programs. So sanitation, pest control, supplier management, control of incoming goods. So we've got general control of general hazards. And then when we go to HACCP application, we look at specific hazards and their control so we're not trying to look at everything. We're focused on assessing, identifying significant hazards and looking at how to control them in our HACCP application. And that might be by critical control points for significant hazards. So the risks, if they are poorly implemented, or are that you've got generic hazards that are giving you issues, and your HACCP plan isn't going to be effective because you haven't controlled the basics. So incoming goods, something like temperature control, check that your goods coming in are not contaminated, they're in good condition, they're in date. Sanitation, that your equipment's clean when it needs to be. And sanitation can be vitally important if you're changing from a product containing an allergen to a product that doesn't contain an allergen. So they can be absolutely vital on your production line and a significant hazard if you're not removing that allergen. So it's important to get a good sound manufacturing base by implementing prerequisite programs, but there may also be hazards that you need to control with good manufacturing practices or prerequisite programs, and you might need to control them to a higher degree and for specific hazards like the one I've just mentioned. Another example might be in catering we've talked about is cleaning of a meat slicer. So they're renowned for being difficult to clean and need to be stripped down. So if our cleaning procedures aren't good and effective, then we can contaminate meat with slicing, which is generally cooked with pathogens like Listeria monocytogenes. So there needs to be enhanced controls and monitoring of that cleaning.
Okay. Maria, is this included for the packaging of dairy products?
Yes, includes dairy products. Yeah, it's food manufacturing, so all food manufacturing processes. Yeah. Okay,
Shahida, can you give me some examples for compressed air quality?
It depends on the product and where the application is. At the point of use, generally, you're looking to have a filter that's removed particles and oil or whatever, but it also needs to be of the appropriate microbiological quality. So things like no coliforms or E. coli, enterobacteriaceae, a limited amount of yeast and molds, and a maximum level of total viable count. But I think it's Trace Analytics do a lot of work with IFSQN. They post a few webinars on the website, and I think if you want more details, I will refer to those. Is it Trace Analytics, Simon?
It is, yeah. Trace Analytics, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Just on that, if you go to the website, there's tons of webinars on all sorts of things. In fact, what I'll do is I'll link. We've got an Excel spreadsheet that's got all the webinars on, and you can search in there, filter by different companies. So you can filter by Trace Analytics, by Tony, by anybody, and then rewatch webinars. Question from George: to be most efficient for food additive manufacturer, does it make sense to check first ISO 22002-1 before reading a 100?
No, I would go with 100 first, definitely. And most of the requirements are in 100, and less so because they're just the specific requirements. So 100 first, then part one.
Sounds good. Question from Nihai: for FSSC 22000 version 6 company, what is the first steps we should do this year to apply for the new version of FSSC in the next year?
Yeah, I think whether you're somebody or a company, that likes to be proactive and get ahead. The standards have been published, so for me, there isn't any reason why not to go ahead and look at the changes and how it affects your site and your procedures that you have in place. And if you haven't, get crack on with that now, and then you're ready for version 7 when it comes along. I don't think by moving to the new standards, you're not going to take away anything that is useful to you that you previously used from the old standards, so the 2009 version. And I think, to be clear, they certainly extended the requirements from 2009 because they were certainly, compared to some of the certification standards such as BRC, they were certainly sort of a condensed or a very basic sort of requirement for each area, covering the fundamentals. So they've been expanded on now.
Okay, very good. Question from Hagen: if a company is still on ISO 22000, do you still have to take the requirements of 22002 when you were unaware of the new version, and will they hold you accountable to it during the audit?
Well, the ISO 22000 standard 22000 standard does refer you to the relevant 22002 series, so it doesn't say specific ones. So really, you should be getting on with that. If you're just ISO 22000 certified, then you're probably looking to be cracking on with that. Now, they might say give you a reasonable time frame, but I don't see any reason why you wouldn't. But it does refer to the 22002 standards in ISO 22000, and I quoted the section earlier in my presentation. I think it was it's on 8.2.
Okay. I think that's it for now. Oh, wait a minute. Big long one from Joanna. We wonder how much of the updated ISO will be relevant for us. We are certified in ISO 22002 in a site for warehouse for fresh salmon, actually a terminal for dispatch inland and export with all the strict rules for air freight in place, and the only production we are doing is for reworking cases of boxes, breakages, and for repacking Otherwise, we also have managing of transport and as well compliance with ASC and GG.
Yeah. I mean, you still need to cover all the basics, and a lot of these are like fabric control of fabric of buildings, facilities, location, pest control. There's extensive new elements, and something as fishy as fish might attract quite a few pests. So there's definitely elements in there which are a lot more specific that you would need to look at. So it's still going to be relevant, even though your operation, there are quite a few elements that are going to be relevant, even if your operation is a handling operation. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another question from George. There is no new ISO 22000, only new updated text technical specs.
I said it in the presentation. From memory, and it's fading badly as I get older. But the ISO 22000 2018 version was reviewed in 2023 and confirmed to be current. So there isn't any plan in the short term for a new one. Sorry, just to add to that, I think there's been an amendment on there, though, more recently. I can't remember where it went in on climate change. Yeah. Okay, sorry, Simon.
No worries. Soundarajan, if X-ray single test piece contains 4 to 5 different detection sizes, then how can we calibrate?
A test piece should be, a single test piece should be one detection size, shouldn't it? Anyway, a test piece is normally one calibration size, and you have different test pieces for the different sizes or elements. All this sort of equipment should be calibrated and installed and commissioned using the manufacturer's instructions to an agreed specification and standard. So it should be capable of achieving what you've defined and agreed with the company, the manufacturer of the X-ray detection equipment. And so you need to have a specification, and you need to commission to that specification and get them to commission and calibrate to that. And then you will check it. You will test the X-ray detector or the foreign body detector that using X-rays. You will test that to those test pieces.
Okay, and Jenny, could you introduce us about ISO 22002-4?
I can't remember which one that covers. No, I can't. I haven't covered that yet. No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Frank, what happens to the sections that have been removed or amended from the old version?
They've been withdrawn. The old versions have been withdrawn of the standards. If you go and look up 22002 Part 1, the original.
Okay.
Yeah, 2009. It's been withdrawn. If you go and search for it, it's been withdrawn. You can't get a copy anymore.
Okay. That's all the questions for now. Do we want to go through the what we've got coming up?
Well, we got a couple of things coming up. First of all, we offer a range of GFSI a range of certification packages, implementation packages compliant with GFSI benchmark standards, including BRCGS, SQF, FSSC 22000, ISO 22000. And so we offer a discount code here for all the members that have subscribed and attended our webinars. So there's a code there for 15% off. For those that are interested, we've just launched, or is it up yet on the website, or is it in the next day or so?
It's not. It'll be up later today or tomorrow.
Okay. So we've launched an updated version of version 6, which is a 2025 version of our FSSC 22,000 Food Safety Management System Implementation Package. So that includes comprehensive food safety management system procedures, prerequisite programs, operational prerequisite programs that are all editable in Microsoft Word, and they're compliant with ISO 22000 Part 1 for food manufacturers, and also ISO 22100, the general prerequisite programs on food safety for food, feed and packaging supply chain, and also compliant with the FSSC 22000 certification scheme additional requirements. They also include record templates, additional HACCP documentation, assistance including training and guidance, an implementation workbook, a startup guide, and free online technical support. Okay.
Yes.
So yeah, we'll next few days. Sorry.
Yeah, we'll include that in the follow-up email as well. This offer, but we also have the training course, internal auditor, coming up.
Sure. So a week on Friday, we've got a 4-hour practical internal auditor training, which is suitable for all members of your internal audit team, as per the requirements of GFSI benchmark standards. We've got a nice little audit exercise in there, 4 hours, and then a multiple choice exam. And once you pass the exam, you get an IFSQN Academy certificate. And the cost of that is $97 a person.
Yeah. And it's 5-star rated, well recommended. So, yeah, refresh your team. If you're extending, you've got new members, send them along, come for yourself. You'll always pick up new tips, tricks, ideas, latest thinking around food safety and auditing. So we'll include that in the following, the follow-up as well. And also, you do get your certificate for this one as well. So there you go.
Sorry, I just on the last one, just looking at the sectors. The 22,004 is for food packaging. Sorry, so yeah, they're on the website. There should be there's a link. If you look at the presentation, there's a link to the changes or summary of the changes in packaging. Prerequisite programs.
Super, brilliant. Another excellent. So we have these so we have the Food Safety Fridays that you all know about, but we've been running these for quite a few months now on a Tuesday at this time, and just short presentation on different topics and Q&A. But yeah, on a Wednesday as even. And 1,300 people, that's really great on a Wednesday. So thanks for all signing up and those that attended, and we'll follow up with an email shortly. And thanks very much to you, Tony.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good week.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.